All right. Good morning, everybody. What was it?
Somebody pushed the copy machine.
Yeah, I don't think it's working. I pushed it before. Yeah, I don't know. I don't come try and fix it. Yeah, I don't know. All right. So we 4 lines in the bottom on Samach Beis Amud Beis. Today's daf Samach Gimel. So Itmar. So Havili Giti. A woman tells, now, number one thing to remember, a man has not an obligation, but if a man chooses to give a get, so there has to be a giving from the man's side, and there has to be a receiving from the woman's side. So one could appoint a shaliach to go ahead and hand it to them, and the woman can go ahead and appoint a shaliach to go ahead and receive it. But when they start getting on the other person's side, then it becomes a little questionable. So the Gemara says, Itmar becomes questionable if they all of a sudden he appoints someone to be makabel on her behalf, which he doesn't have the authority to, right? He only has makabel to go ahead and give it to someone on her side. So Havili Giti, she says, bring me my get. She tells somebody, bring me my get, tells John to be the shaliach today. So Havili Giti. And then John comes to me and he says, your wife told me I should receive the get for her. Now you'll go ahead and fix it out, go get your tools.
Maybe sugya from the last myself. How about people not knowing how to talk?
Yeah, we're gonna see it for an hour.
Nothing's different with showing up people. They don't know how to talk.
Yeah. So he says, right, your wife said I should receive it. Oh, sure. All right. He says receive it. So I go ahead and I tell John, okay, do as she said. Now, what she really said was bring it to me, right? He represented her saying, my receiving it basically makes her divorced. So the husband says, hey, Kamash Amra, Amrav Nacham, Amravua, Amarav, Afilu Higia get liyada, even if he eventually brings the get back to her, eino migareshes. She is not divorced
Until it reaches their hand.
No, afilu higia get liyada, even if the get comes back to her, eino migareshes. She is not divorced. Shmamina, why is that? Adiburi didei kasam. The husband relied upon the shaliach. The shaliach said, I was receiving it. I'm not bringing it to her. I'm just being makabel the get, and she never authorized him just to be makabel the get. She didn't want him to be makabel the get. She wanted to be makabel the get herself. Makabelas the get, right? So she just wanted to bring it to her, but he didn't do that. So he says. So we see according to Amarav Nachum Ravua Amarav. So ain't a migareshes. Because if I go ahead, or the husband goes ahead and gives the get to him, relying on what she actually said, even though I never heard what she actually said, right? Once the get eventually reaches to her, then she'll be divorced. But that didn't happen here. So we see it doesn't work at all. Some Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi, Haki Hashta. Well, let's take a look at it. I understand. So let's go see. Let's go see. All right, this is D'Rabban D'Oraisa that it doesn't work. So no, it's not big enough for me to be. The guy dies, no kids. Can you do yibum, right? And can you go ahead and do yibum? Or, right, if you were divorced, right, then if there's something to the divorce, then you can't do yibum, but maybe just do chalitza just in case.
She gets married, she's divorced. The kids comes her.
Right. Well, definitely, if it says that. Well, if she says if it's Eina Migareshes, then she's married. We wouldn't allow her to. Right? We don't allow her. We say Eina Migareshes. Right. But but there's never a point where we say that she's Eina Migareshes. Right? No, it's the other way around. Right? It's usually that really she's. You don't say that really Mikardin she's married, but Midrabanan she's not married. Right? It's usually the other way around.
No, with your wife says she wouldn't be married, but with your bottom she still is.
Right, but this is the other thing. This is the Eina Migareshes, right? So now, of course, it's a Bishlam Itmar Itfa. Let's say it was the opposite. Now, what was the case? If she says, accept my get, and you're accepting makes me divorce, and the guy comes here and says, Vishka Amra Havali Gita, and your wife told me just to bring it to her. He said, okay, do as she says. Amarav Nachman, Ravua, Amarav, Kevan get liyado, Migoreshes. In that case, once the get reaches her hand, we would say Migoreshes, Alma, Adibur Didak, Hukosam, right? Because over there, once the get reaches her hand, then we could see that it was relying upon her, and she's a Miskabel. Inami.
What was the first case? And now we have the second. The first case.
First case was, right, if you look at the words, 4 lines to the bottom, the first part is Havali Giti. This is what she's saying to him. All right, look at that for a second. Right? Havali Giti means bring me my get.
Bring me my get.
And the Ishtacha, and then when the part says Ishtacha, what the Gemara means is, and then the Shaliach is telling the husband, the Ishtacha Amarli Iskabali Gita. She's telling me to be Makabal the get. And over there it says none of it works because he basically threw off the shlichus. It doesn't work at all. Over here, if it's the opposite where she says to be makabel my get, then he tells her go ahead and bring the get, and he says do as she said. Right now, is it do as she said what she originally said, or is it what the shliach represented that she said? So on that, so Kevin should get the get liyad. Once again, a migrashes, right? Alma in that case, right over there, he could be relying her words because she said he's Kabbalah Gita, and therefore once it gets her hands, he was Kabbalah, then even though he did the extra thing of delivering it, it's still fine. Inami or Liyada, or once it reaches her hand, then she's divorced. He's relying upon him because he says, I'm the Shaliach of the bringing. Elahacha, Mishum de Kashlech Lishachuse, the Gamri Hudiamar, right? But in this case, right? In this case, because he's being Aikir the Shlichus Lagamre, right? He's told, be Makabel my get. And he's basically saying, I'm not being Makabel the get, I'm just going to bring her the get, right? So he's basically, he's uprooting that, right? So he says, right? But in our case, in other words, in the opposite, when it was told to go ahead and bring it to me, I don't want to go ahead and bring it to you. You live too far. I'll be Makabel it. But she never told him, be Makabel it. So he didn't have the authority to say, you're going to go ahead and be divorced from your wife when you give it to me. So, Amar Rav Huna Bar
In the
Chia.
first case, because he did not do what the wife wanted. She wanted him.
Who cares what the wife
Bring
wants? But no, seriously, I thought the whole point of giving you get was.
No, because he can't. You can't appoint. You can't appoint a shliach for her.
To be a makubal,
And that's why it said over there,
that it doesn't work.
according to Rav Nachman Bar Avua,
He uprooted his.
that's what we're saying now, right? We should the shlichus of the gamra, right? Now, Amar Rav Chia Bar Chia, excuse me, Amar Rav Huna Bar Chia, Tashma, listen, ha'imir iskabel get zel ishti. If one who goes ahead and says, be makabel, look at our Mishnah, right? He says, iskabel get zel ishti. Someone tells somebody else, another man, be makabel for me. Oh, halech gets the ishti, or take this get my wife. He can go ahead and retract it before it actually arrives to her. Tama the Ratza sounds like only if he wants to go ahead and retract. Hold on, Ratza, but it doesn't retract. How to get it would work. The husband is not able to go ahead and authorize something to be makabel for her. So El Amrinan. So what do we say? Kevan shenas and elav legarsha. Maybe Amar tigarish kohech the megarsha. Maybe it's like it's a new svara. Since all he wanted was to divorce his wife. So therefore, if I tell him be makabel it, I didn't mean for the way for it to work was you being makabel it. I didn't care that. I wanted her to be divorced. So I executed. So therefore, when I said miskabel, I didn't really mean miskabel. I didn't divorce her. He can't be miskabel. Fine. So she's not divorced yet. But once it arrives to her, then she's divorced. So therefore, that was his intentions. So hachinami. We should say in our case, kevan shenasan einav legarsha, right? We should say once in this case when he goes, intends to go ahead and divorce her. So maybe right? So it should be in this case, she should be divorced. Whether he's dependent on her, he had intentions to divorce her. The guy mixed up what she told him. So therefore, nevertheless, his intentions were to divorce her. So you're going to got to bring it, you can makabel it. Okay, either way. So when it says hakiyash, I'm going to make the comparison.
This guy becomes his new agent. He brought came first
So we'll see.
He gives the get.
So we'll see about dual agency. Right? Everyone has to sign off. I know that is, but let's see in this case. Let's see what happens. Now, hachi hashta. Maybe you can't commit to this. Everybody knows that a man cannot go ahead and appoint someone to be a shaliach to be makabel for his wife. Right? She has to go ahead and do it. So that which I say be makabel for her, obviously that wasn't my intentions. Right? My intentions were to bring it to her. Right? So therefore, when he gave it to her, he basically intended to go ahead and bring it to her. However, but over here there was a mistake. In other words, he was told that the guy was just going to bring it, and or he was told that the guy was just going to was being makabel for her, and really he was only authorized to bring it. So maybe there was misinformation in this case, and it should work differently. Samarava, a similar question. Katana Shamra is a young katana who can get divorced, but she doesn't have the authority to go ahead and make a shaliach. So if a katana, she tells somebody be miskabel my get, so ain't no get. She get liada. The get only happens when it comes to her hand. No one. I'm sorry. Because she doesn't. She's not a bardas. But once you're
Not 12.
you get married, right? Her father can marry her off, or father died, right? So she can become divorced, but only when the get comes to her hand. But she can't appoint someone to be makabel the get for her. So she get liada. However, you get liada miyad megarsh. Nevertheless, when the get gets to her hand, she is divorced. Aviyamai halav shaliach lalicha shabya. So she told somebody makabel my get, and John goes ahead and be makabel the get, and he brings it to her, right? So she's divorced when she gets it. So you see, ultimately she is divorced, but she didn't ever made you a shaliach for bringing it to her. She just made you a shaliach kabbalah, not a shaliach chalicha. So we say in that case, no, why? Because the husband had intentions to divorce her. So therefore, since he gave it to her with intention to divorce her, and she wanted him to go ahead and basically also be a assistance in the divorcing process, it works. However, so we should say the same thing over here in this case. So one says, how can you go ahead and compare the two? Everyone knows there is no a shliach cannot go ahead and make a shliach, an agent on his behalf. The gamar, the nasan l'shum halicha, dide. Over there, he says, I know when the guy says, hey, your wife, the nice 11-year-old girl told me to be makabel to get for her. I know he can't be makabel for her. So therefore I said, when I gave it to him, I meant for him to go ahead and bring it back to her, because that's the only way it will be effective. So that's what I intended. But over here, over here there was misinformation, right? In this case, right, she said, just bring me the get, and the guy said, I'm the shliach kabbalah. So therefore, maybe it's different. Maybe it shouldn't work like Rav Nachman, but it is in the name of Rav Nachman or Rav Hua Amarav. So Tashma, come listen. Havali Giti. So she says, bring me my get. The Ishtaka, and then this messenger comes over. Ishtaka Amra, Hiskabel li Giti. Told me to be Mikabel the get. Or Hiskabel li Giti. Or she said to him, be Mikabel my get. And then he reported Ishtaka Amra, Havali Giti. All right, this is the two cases, vice versa. And she said, I should go ahead and bring the get. Who Omer, and he says, Holech v'tein la. Go. In other words, bring it, right? Holech is go, right? Like bring it, right? Walk it over there and give it to her, right? So holech v'tein la, or he says zachila, or miskabela, or be makabela. Rotza lachzer yachzer. If he wants to go ahead and be chayzer at any point before it's received by her, in either one of these cases, then he can go back. In other words, the shaliach, his receiving of it before he delivered it was not a divorce. However, once it gets into her hand, then migarashes. So my love is not the case. So there's two different cases here. Kabbalah a Kabbalah. V'halicha chalicha. In other words, when she says, right, right, to be mekabelet, or when he said to be mekabelet, it was going on the case, right, of where the person said that he was told to be Kabbalah, right? I was told to be the Shliach Kabbalah, and he says, be mekabelet, right? And when he says, go ahead and walk it to her, alicha, it was alicha. It was when the guy represented, I'm the agent to bring it. right? And therefore, in this case, we see that nevertheless, it's all right. When it gets to her hand, it's valid. So therefore, if he's responding the same thing as he was told, it seems like he's depending on the guy. So Gemara says, no, lo, kabbalah aholicha v'aholicha kabbalah. No, maybe. So it says no. Maybe we're talking about the case of that which he says, receive it, right? It was really referring to, right, when she said, go ahead and bring it to me, right? And the shliach said, I was appointed to go ahead and receive it, or vice versa. So therefore, it's not the direct case. So I understand. So if we're talking about a case where he says to be makabelit, right? In other words, when she said to go ahead and bring it, actually, when the guy said I was told to bring it, but she said receive it. So she said receive it, and the husband said here receive it on her behalf, right? And the guy said I was told just to bring it. So if that's the case, right? Only when it gets to her hand she's divorced. Right? It should be a get right when she receives it because she said be makabel for me. He said be makabel for her. The shliach was the one who messed up and said, I was told to bring it. But either way, both of them had intentions for the shliach to do the Kabbalah, and that should work. Why does it only work when he brings it back to her, which was something that was made up by the shliach? So Shema Mina, the adibure dide kasaf. So you see that it must be because when the shliach tells him something, it must be that he's relying on whatever was told to him by the shliach, whatever the husband was told by the shliach. That's what he responds, not to whatever conversations there were between the woman and the messenger. He was not privy to those conversations, and he could only know what the messenger told him, and therefore the das goes on that. Right? Kamash Shamra, right? So over there, right? He says over there, this is for you. In other words, when he says to the shliach, right? Hey, look, Kamash Shamra, here it is. Do as she said, whatever she said, right? You know, that's the case there about haka. But over here, right? Did he say do as she said? No, he didn't. He just said, right? Basically, take it. So now, basically, take this case, and therefore that's why it's different. So Taner Rabban. So slightly different case. He's kabbalah giti. Well, let's see. He's kabbalah giti. So once again, going. So she says, "Be mekabel my get." V'yishchan, the guy comes and reports, V'yishchan ra he's kabbalah giti, and your wife told me to be mekabel get. Who omer, and he responds, Halech v'tein la. He says, go and give it to her, or zachila, or acquire it for her, v'yiskabela, or be accepted. Ratza lachzor lo yachzor. He cannot, according to the Tanakama, he cannot go back and retract. Rav Nassan Aimer, Halech v'tein la ratza lachzor yachzor. When the guy says, I'm here to be makabel get, and he says, go give it to her. So in this case, says Rav Nassan, he can go back. Now, the guy was not makabel the get. He says, I'm a shliach Kabbalah. He basically, in essence, turned around and says, you're going to be the holicha. You're just bringing it to her. I don't want you to be makabel for her. She'll be makabel. Bring it to her. So therefore, in this case, ratza lachzor yachzor. If he wants to be chayzer before the get arrives in her hands, even though the shliach was makabelit, then he can still be chayzer.
So in other words.
But he says, 1 second, he says,
husband is overruling what the wife said.
In this shliach.
He's
Right.
changing the shliach from a shliach.
In this case,
Kabbalah
according to Rav
Kabbalah.
Nassan. According to Rav Nassan. So, however, he said, Zakhlav is Kabbalah, but if he says, okay, take it on her behalf or be Kabbalah on her ass, he can't go ahead and be chayzer because once it went in the shliach's hand, she was megureshes. And Rebbe Aimer, Bekulan, all these cases, whether he says Halech v'tein or he says Zakhala v'skabala, Bekulan imratz alachzor lo yachzor. He can't go back. Right? It's the very simple to the Kama. Avali Aimer lo. If he tells him Iyevshi shetiskabala, I do not. The guy says, okay, I'm here to be mekabel the get on your wife's behalf, and he says Iyevshi shetiskabala, I do not want you to be mekabel on her behalf. Ela Halech v'tein lo. Rather, go ahead and give it to her. Or ratza lachzor yachzor. Then he's allowed to go ahead and back. He's allowed to go ahead and change it, as Eddie's sort of pointing out. So Gemara first of all says, "I Rebbe Hainu Tanakama." So there's three opinions here: the Tanakama, Reb Nassan, and Rebbe. Rebbe and the Tanakama have the same opinion. In other words, that it goes ahead and you can be chayzer. So the Gemara says no. Excuse me, lo yachzor, right? You can't go back at all. So Tanakama, Rebbe had Tanakama. So you might say, yefshi asil ashminan. It could be that maybe we're coming to teach the last case. If the guy specifically says, instead of just saying go and give it to her, then the get works once the shliach gets. But if he says, I do not want you to be makabel and bring it to her, then that does work. Maybe that's the difference between Tanakama and Rebbe. Or you might say, Tanakama is coming to teach us who is the Tanakama. That is Rebbe. Fine. So over there, Reb Nassan was the one that says, he says, go and give it to her, right? Then he can be chayzer. Then the guy is now a shliach halicha. But if he says, halach, right? Sort of like, here it is, right? Halach. Reb Nassan, is it kaskidami? Ola kaskidami. Is he zeichen, or as he says halach, and therefore the guy, once he is mekabelet, she's divorced, or la kaskidami. So Tashma, come and listen. Ha'im is kabel get zel ishti. Oh, halach get zel ishti. One who says, the makabel, our Mishnah says, accept this get on behalf of my wife, or bring this get to my wife. He can go ahead and retract because he cannot go ahead and make a shliach kabbalah on behalf of his wife. And ha'isha she'amra hiskabel giti, and a woman who told somebody, hey, go ahead and accept my get, and he gives it to her. Then once it goes into the shliach's hand, then it doesn't work. So my, turn the page. So my la behalach. Are we not talking about a case of halach, and therefore, therefore Reb Nassan, and this is the case of Reb Nassan, and we see over here that in other words, he argues in the case between halach and right holech, right? So is this not talking about? Is this not referring to the opinion of Reb Nassan? Brian says no, lo beholech. Over here, we're talking about a case of where he doesn't say halech, here it is, but he says holech, take it to my wife. And Rebbe, and therefore it goes according to Rebbe. It's not Reb Nassan. So Tashma, come listen, similar proof. I do not want to do mekabelet, rather go ahead and bring it over and give it to her. So Ratzalach, so yeah, so you can go ahead and bring it back. Tamadamar Yavshi. It's only if he says, hey, I don't want, he wants to retract. But if he says, it's only if he says, I do not want to be mekabelet. Hello, Amar Yavshi. But if he doesn't say, I don't want you to be mekabelet, Ratzalach. So Ratzalach, so lo yachzor, he's not allowed to go back. So what do you see over here? My la behalach is not referring to halach, Reb Nassan, and therefore it's Reb Nassan that he can't go back. So Gemara says, no, lo behalach. Right? It means a case where he doesn't say here it is, rather it means go bring it, and therefore it's the opinion of Rebbe. So Tashma, Hailech get zel ishti. One who says, go ahead and take this get to my wife. Ratzalachso yachzor. Hailech get zel ishti. But if he says here is the Hailech, is that here it is, right? Zel ishti. Ratzalachso lo yachzor. If he can't go back. So manshmias le damar b'holech ratzalachso yachzor. Who's the one who says where he says, go bring it to her, and he wants to go ahead and be able to chayzer and go back? That's only Reb Nassan. They come and he says specifically in the case of Halech, here it is, Ratzalachzor lo yachzor. He can't go back yet at all. So Shmamina, Halech is skidami. Shmamina. Indeed, learn from here that according to Reb Nassan, when he says Halech, here it is, it means he's being acquired on her behalf. So Itamar, Iskabali Giti. So he said, a woman says, go ahead and make my get. The guy comes back. Your wife said, I should be makabel get. Go ahead and bring it to her. So Amar Rabbi Abba Amar Huna Amar Rav Nasa Shlucho v'Shlucha v'Choletzes. In this case, this guy is now both shlichim. She says, "Be my shlich for Kabbalah." He says, "Be the shlich for Halicha." And now in this situation, right? So let's say the messenger has it, and he dies, or excuse me, or the husband dies. Right? The husband dies. So, and they had no kids. So if she was divorced, she could marry anybody she wants. If she was still married, then she would be obligated to do yibum. So we say choletzes, right? So now because of a suffix was asked before, right? This is doraisa, so it's a suffix. Maybe divorce, maybe not. Maybe that his receiving of it did a divorce, or maybe the fact that he tried to make her shaliach also his shaliach, a dual agent, right? Then maybe that also works. We say that so therefore that changes. We say chaletzes. Gemara says, "I maybe this sveka le Rav. So what? The whole subject goes when he says hoylech, right? Is hoylech meaning is he zeichet? And as if he would have said be zeichet, right? So then the get would have worked, or maybe it means actually bring it. Tomorrow we learn hoylech manul ploni. Someone that says go ahead and take this $100 and bring it to. I go to John and say, hey, bring this $100 to Avrami Shani Chaylo that I owe him. And Amar Rav, something happens to the money. Amar Rav, Chayev Bachar Yosef, right? So according to Rav, so he is responsible, right? John's responsible, Chayev Bachar Yosef, right? In other words, it sounds like he was Zeicha the money on behalf of Avrami. It's like I already paid Avrami, right? So Amar Rav, Chayev Bachar Yosef, and therefore I can't go ahead and retract it. So what do you see there? I can't retract it. So understand why in that case when I say Hoylech, John is makabel the money on behalf of Avrami. But if I say John Holech, this get to my wife, so she's not yet divorced, it's a suffix, right? What's going on here? So Hasam suffix Mamaina. So the Kula over there is suffix Mama, we go to the Kula, and therefore it's considered as paid. I meant to be Zeich on his behalf. However, Hachab in this case, where it's suffix Isura, right? Whether or not she's an Ashes Ish or not, we say Luchumra. We say no, it has to go. We say Luchumra, and therefore we said maybe she's not divorced, and therefore maybe. There's a document she's an Alman or a Rusha. Well, the Gabi, she can marry. She marry home. You're saying her as the wife, right? To her if she's an Alman. Right. So the if say in this case, we would assume that she's a suffix. Right. So I assume that she was a suffix, right? Out a suffix that she wouldn't be able, right? Yeah. She's not being with her. She just. Yeah. She's a single woman, right? Says Rab, a woman cannot go ahead and make a shaliach to be makabel to get from the hand of a shaliach, right? The husband told somebody, I told John, go ahead and bring this get. And then the woman, right? We'll say Avrami, the woman, appoints Josh to go ahead and be his shaliach, says, you know what? Avrami says he's playing this game. He can't give it to me face to face. He wants to send a shaliach. I'll send a shaliach. So my shaliach, we have a shaliach. Your people talk to my people. So he can't do that. Isha can't do it. No, a woman can go ahead and make a shaliach to the kabel the get beyond shaliach baila from the hands of her husband. So my time in the Rab, what's the reason going to Rab? Ibay saying shouldn't be zayin the Baal. If it's either because of bizayin to Baal, in other words that she doesn't go ahead and receive it, and therefore she's not even, she can't even go ahead and take the get. So therefore, her appoint someone would be a bizayin the Baal. Because the case of chatzera, what's the case of chatzera? A man goes ahead and he has to give it to her. So let's say she has property, and he places it in her rishus. So that qualifies as giving it to her. It's an extension of her. It's her chatzer. Let's say this. I put it in someone's yard, okay? And then that person sells it to my wife. So maybe people might think that, it's her yard, it gets there, it's in her chatzer, she should be divorced. So that does not work. So if I go ahead and I get a shaliach from a shaliach, people might think that the case of chatzer does work, right? I put in the chatzer, now the chatzer is acting as the shaliach, and therefore she gets the shaliach after the fact. So people might think that works. So therefore in this case, we don't say it works. So Mishul Chatzer, Habab Leachmikan. There's a Chatzer that comes after the fact. So my Benai, what's Nachmina, whether we say it's Bizayin the Baal or Chatzer Habab Leachmikan? Sika Benayu, the Kadma'i, the Shav is Shaliach Meikar. If she went ahead and made the Shaliach originally, right? Then maybe that since it's not coming after the fact, right? In other words, and therefore maybe it's not similar to the case. So if it's not similar to the case, then we wouldn't be guys in such a case. But in terms of Bizayon the Baal, this shows a Bizayon the Baal, even if she went ahead and appointed her husband first. So a person sent a get to his wife. So the shliach, when he found her, she's in there kneading dough. So Amar La, here is your get. She said to him, let it remain in your hand. So, or I never thought of that. So no, it's not necessarily. I don't want to receive it, but in other words, you be my shaliach Kabbalah, right? I'm busy. Okay, except I'm having. Actually, that could be Pshat maybe in this case, right? So over there, she's saying, just be my shaliach Kabbalah. So if it's according to Rabbi Chanina, who said a woman can make a shaliach, right, from their husband. So Rabbi Chanina. So he says in Rabbi Chanina, right? So therefore, if that's the case, then in other words, this woman is divorced because you're allowed to go ahead and make a shaliach from shaliach. Samalei Rabba, the Rabbi Chanina Avdalei Uvda, hello. Right? So what do you mean? In order for a person to be shaliach, he has to have the ability to still go back to the Baal. But if she appoints this person as the shaliach Kabbalah, so therefore it loses the aspect of chazar shlichus eitzel habal, and therefore it's because there's no more retracting. Right? Go ahead and do something. You going and do it's already done because you were the shliach Kabbalah. So it's not real shlichus. If it's not real, it's one thing. Rabbi Chanina said you make a one shliach, and I make another shliach. Rabbi Chanina says that works. My shliach can go ahead and accept it from your shliach. But according to Rabbi Chanina, why should I be able to go ahead and make your shliach my shliach? There's no shliach chazara. He can't go ahead and ever return and say, okay, hey husband, here's your get back, because by the second while it's in his hand, she's already divorced. So Gemara says, he sent this question to Rabbi Ami, so Shakalu, he says, it's not a case of Chazar Shlichut Eitzel Habal. Rabbi Kibar they asked him, Amar and the Yashe B'Davar. So he says, it's definitely it's a shaila, right? It's a good question. What are you gonna do? And other shlichut coming to Rabbi Chia, they were hacking up all the rabbanim. They asked Rabbi Kibar Amar Kolhani Shluchah Allah. Right, so he says in all these cases, right, is why you keep sending this to me, right? Right, so over there it was a just like over there that you guys are in Suffolk. So too, we are in Suffolk whether this works or not, or whether she can go ahead and make this person a shliach. And but nevertheless, Havi Davar Shabe'erva. This is considered a Davar Shabe'erva, i.e., whether she's an Ashes Ish or not. Davar Shabe'erva Chaletzes. And the loch is that's a suffix. In other words, we say that maybe she is divorced, maybe she's not. Therefore, you should go ahead and re-divorce. If you don't get the opportunity to go ahead and re-divorce, then perhaps if the guy dies and no kids, then she would not allow her to do yibum, only chalitza. And Havi Uvda, there was a mamish this ma'isa that occurred. Veitzricha Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta get the chalitza, both a divorce and chalitza. So the Gemara says tarti. Well, wait, two. It means get michayim. And in this case happened, we require that the husband was still alive, to go ahead and re-give her a get, or the guy died, but chalitza lachamis, or she has to do chalitza, not allowed to do you. And haida havi karla nafata. There was a lady that was called Nafata. Azdi sahadi. So he told these is Adim, go ahead, write a get for my wife Nafata. So the Adim went and Kasub Tefata. They wrote the wrong name. Mustafa, right? Whatever it is, Tefata. So Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta Mishmei Derav Asu Adim Shlichusa. So he says over there that they did the shlichus. In other words, they were told to write a get. They wrote it wrong. That's it. They only had one opportunity, and that was it. And therefore, the get is not good. They can't go ahead and rewrite it. And the husband has to go ahead and give new demands, new shlichus to the aid. They have no authority to rewrite it. So Maska Rabba, mi kamar lu kisu chaspa v'havula. I understand. He didn't tell them write a meaningless paper. He wrote them write a get. So that which they just did, they didn't write anything. It wasn't a get because it was the wrong names. So he meant write a kosher get. They didn't do it the first time, so do it a second time. Salamarabba, Vadai, because of, so he says, no, you're right. In this case, Vadai, because of Sahadi Gita Malia of Avad, so okay, in this case, you're right. But let's say they wrote a good get. He told him, write a good get, right? Go ahead, write a good get, deliver. they write a good get. They did the shlichus and then they lost it. It's considered to be lost. So Gemara says, so maskifla, so of it, basically their authority is over. So maskifla Rav Nachman, he kamar lo kisvo v'anacha b'kisai. I understand. He told them write a get and just leave it around. He wanted them to write a valid get and deliver that valid get. So they wrote the valid get, but they didn't deliver it. They lost it. So of course they should have the authority to rewrite a get without no instructions and deliver it, because that was they were told. They were just told to rewrite a get. They were to write a get. They were told to write a get and deliver a good get. They didn't do that yet. So of course they should be able to. So Elamar Rav Nachman, Kaisiv, and nice enough. They can go ahead and write, and if something happens to it, they can go ahead and rewrite it again. Because once he gives the authority to go ahead and write it and give it, he meant write it a good get and deliver it. Right? If you don't do it the first time, the second time, third time, you still have the authority to go ahead and do it. So by me, Rav Nachman, Kasiv Tenu l'shliach Mahu. So if he tells them write it and give it to a shliach and they'll deliver it. So Mahu Saluki Salik Lahu, is he basically telling them that in other words, once they give the shliach, right, and now they're no longer authorized to go ahead if the shliach, let's say, loses it, they're no longer allowed to write the get again to give it to that shliach. Right? Or maybe he just said, "You guys, look, I want to deliver. It was not your job. You did your job, but if you have to do it again, you have to do it again." So Rav Ashi, so it says, so he says, what if he told them write it right? And he says that I was to go ahead and you give it to her. In other words, since he told the second guy, go ahead and give it to her. In other words, can they go ahead and write it again for him to go ahead and give it? So take it, because the Gemara does not give a teres in this case. And we'll just finish off. If the woman says, "Go ahead and take my get," right? The husband wants to go ahead and retract it. It does not work. And Tanrabadan totally, if she says, right, take it from me, or Vaseli, right, also lift it up for me, or that of mine should be in your hands. Kula and Lashon Kabbalah. And all these are Lashon Kabbalah, that they should be her shliach to be makabel again once the get reaches their hands. Therefore, she is considered to be Migareshes. And we will stop here. Hopefully tomorrow, Mr. Shem, we will get to a. Yeah.